Been keeping an eye on events in the DRC, and he now joins us in studio. Nixon, thank you so much for joining us. What do you think is the reason for President Joseph Kabila to stick to the December polls date, which was postponed to basically the 23rd of December 2018, and not basically ignoring calls from the opposition and doing nothing about it and sticking to the decision that was taken by his government?
One, there are critical issues that you have to look at when it comes to the issue of the Democratic Republic of Congo. The president has been in power since 2001 after the death of his father, and he has since then created alliances within the political class in the DRC, therefore enabling him to maneuver power and stay on until such a time he feels that his political interests are protected.
Why does he want to stay in power?
Well, there are certain interests that you have to look at. One, the president has become one of the millionaires on the continent. I believe he's the fourth richest president on the continent currently as we speak. He's involved in quite a number of economic activities that at the cost of the country. You have to look at the president having about 76 companies under his head, mostly by his relatives, the likes of his sister, twin sister, and the young brother Joe Kabila. So you have a web that's happening at the cost of the development of the country. Let's say, for instance, the issue of passports. The Congolese passport is one of the most expensive passports around the world. It costs $190, which is close to almost 2,500 rands in South African rands. So you have a president who is there just merely for political interest and economic interest to protect. Instead, if he leaves in power, then who is going to cater for those issues? The other issue, though, is the historical trajectory that Congo has gone through. Now, you have regional power players such as the Uganda and the Rwanda and Tanzania, by the way. So those dynamics makes the Congo conflict and the Congo political process a multifaceted one, owing to such a regional factors, but also the demographic of the region as well, that translate into sort of land issues, ethnic violence issues, and so on.
Now, do you think that the situation on the ground is going to get any worse than what it already is?
The situation in Congo is I must say, is one of the worst conflict ever forgotten by the world community. Now you have a country which has lost close to over than 8 million people since the conflict started in 1996. No one, even the international community, are actually benefiting from the conflict, because the war per se is a business in Congo, be it on the part of the MONUSCO, be it in part of the warring parties, be it in part of militias. Everyone just benefits. You cannot explain a situation where you have 19,000 UN peacekeepers, yet peace cannot prevail in restive regions such as the Eastern DRC, where people are massacred on a daily basis, and there are few reports. The world just turn a blind eyes on that country.
Let's go back to the issue of the regional issues, or the historical issues that you touched on, which is the Uganda and the surroundings. Ethnic, land, and regional issues. Just go into that a little. Just give us a sense of what exactly is going on in terms of the DRC, because I think the world may not really be understanding the issues that are taking place, and some of the reasons why President Kabila does not want to step down.
Well, there are key issues, and the story of the DRC is quite long. I'm afraid that we might spend quite a long time.
Just give us a synopsis.
But briefly,
yes.
You have the DRC, which was colonized by Belgium. At the same time, Rwanda was colonized by Belgium at the same time, but it was a former colony of the Germans. After Germany was defeated after the Second World War, the First World War, because Germany was also being colonizing Tanzania, they have to secede those colonies. Tanzania went to the British, and Rwanda and Burundi, which was a sort of a one region protectorate, went to the Belgian. So you have those cross-border movement, whereas population could move from Rwanda to come and work in the plantation of coffee in Eastern DRC and other, agricultural products that the colonial masters wanted. So you have sort of that population movement adding pressure to question of lands, therefore emanating from conflict. Now you have a country like Rwanda, which has had conflict, ethnic conflict, which always spill over, by the way, in the DRC. So that also add the pressure. Now, if you look at how the conflict has started first in Uganda, whereas Museveni took over power in 1996 with the group that actually, the likes of Paul Kagame, the likes of those who studied RPF, the late Fred Rugema, those army officers who served in the Ugandan liberation movement, now going to Rwanda, and the same going to the DRC in 1996 under the pretext that they are following those militias from the Hutu communities and Habyarimana, who had fled at the time in the DRC. So it's that continuation in a nutshell that's still happening today, that Rwanda can still say that, okay, we're getting to the DRC because we are under threat, we have Interahamwes who can come to our side. So that creates a room for different warlords taking a center stage, but also the question of mineral resources, because the country is one of the richest in the world in terms of mineral resources. So those mineral resources are also adding already to the existing social conflicts that happen within the region.
What can the world do? You mentioned the fact that there was about plus minus 19,000 UN peacekeepers who were deployed there. Just a couple of days ago, scores of people died in anti-Kabila protests. The internet was cut, so there was no access to social media, email, anything of the sort. What needs to happen? What does the world need to do in ensuring that the people of the Democratic Republic of Congo get a peaceful environment or a peaceful nation, and there's peaceful transition of the new administration? There
have to be a political commitment on the part of the political class in the DRC to international pressure on the DRC to actually allow a transition that will lead the country to a peaceful democratic processes that will be owned by the Congolese people. But once the international community is also quiet and also part of the clique in terms of looting the natural resources, because there is no functioning government that can actually regulate the process of extraction of minerals in that country. Let's say, for instance, you take it like the coltan, which is useful to the manufacturing of cell phones. Without that particular minerals, there is no microchip to function in our cell phones. I bet you everyone who have a cell phone around this world, be it your computer, you have a blood on your hand, because those minerals are coming from the DRC in a conflict where people are suffering and no one is responding. So if the world can respond in that way and say, putting more pressure on the political class in the DRC and trying to make sure that there is a freeze on arms flow, because the country does not even manufacture any single bullet, yet you still have a multitude of armed caches and armament as well as ammunitions finding its way into the country.
Nixon, the issue of the Catholic Church, for the longest time, the Catholic Church has played a pivotal role in the affairs of trying to bring peace in the DRC and trying to ensure that Kabila does give final dates with regards to his stepping down as president and ensuring that there's a democratic process, a peaceful process of a new administration coming into play. He seems to have turned his back on the Catholic Church. What does that mean?
Exactly. This is a recalcitrant president who does not care what the political pressure says or any democratic process happen in the country. All what the ruling party want is to preserve power by all means. And those who understand too well political theories, he is executing what the Machiavellian theory says. Be nasty by all means, hold power by all means. That's what the president is doing. I mean, the Catholic Church has been pivotal from the 1990 when the National Sovereign Conference happened, the first negotiations under Mobutu's power when the country was transitioning from a dictatorship to introducing multi-party politics. The Catholic Church was at the forefront in actually allowing that negotiation processes to take place within its facilitation. To date, the Catholic Church still a major force in trying to make sure that the Congolese people have a voice through the church, because the Catholic Church is almost about 70% of the Congolese population who are adherent to the church.
Now, Nixon, the DRC has told Belgium to close down its agency in the country and to shut an EU visa processing center. Now, this is their former colonizer, as you mentioned, you touched on this earlier. This latest spat with this former colonial power, is the DRC not shooting itself in the foot? Basically, is President Joseph Kabila not shooting himself in the foot? Why the shutdown? What exactly is going on there?
You have correctly said it, because if you look at Belgium currently is a development agency that is being at the center stage of this current crisis. Belgium said that we are going to directly deal with the population who are beneficiary of the development aid that we're providing. But because there is so much corruption within the government, they couldn't allow that, because they know that once there is a direct dealing among beneficiaries, then the government who were part of the corruption network are going to lose that particular. So to frustrate those developments, they have to shut down. But the question is, who are suffering from this government position? It's the Congolese people themselves. Secondly, the Belgian tried to actually help the country to train the military. The Republican Guard, actually, which was the elitist army within Kabila's government, was trained by the Belgian. But because of that cooperation, Belgium withdrew its military cooperation with the DRC, and now what that tells you is to weaken the national army. The question is Kabila interested in building a country with statisticians that are responsive to citizens, or is he just there to maintain power by himself?
You tell us that. Is he looking to build a positive country with a good administration going forward, or is he just there for the power?
The question is clear. As we have discussed in this engagement, you can see that it's the president who is there just for himself, because with so much natural resources. By the way, the country has had a war for the past almost 25 years. You have never had the DRC receiving food aid, simply because the country is rich enough in terms of food production, it's rich enough, it's fertile enough with a good fertile land producing enough food to feed the population. But because there are no mechanism, there are no systems, there is no functioning government to actually allow the development and the thriving of the population, that seems to be going nowhere.
Nixon, do you think that President Joseph Kabila will stick to the date that was given, which is, I think, the 23rd of December 2018, to hand over power to a new administration and ensure that a free and fair election does take place in the DRC?
Quite frankly, to be honest with you, Lulu, and your viewers, it is too early to tell. You have to look at the regional dynamics. Kabila lived in Uganda and he lived in Tanzania. He was trained in a military training center in Kabamba in western Uganda. He understands the politics of the region. Now, if one will have to look at the regional trends, where in Uganda, Museveni has changed the constitution to remain in power. In Rwanda, Paul Kagame has changed the constitution to remain in power. In Tanzania, a bill by a member of parliament called John Gamia is being introduced in the Tanzanian parliament to extend the term limit of President Magufuli from 5 years to 7 years. In Congo Brazzaville, who Denis Sassou Nguesso has been trying to become a role player and a mediation between the opposition in the DRC and the government, also have changed the constitution to remain in power. Now that tells you Burundi as well, which is, I'm just talking about immediate neighbors. So this is the way that Kabila is buying time, because within the political circle in the DRC, there is a talk of a referendum. Now, who is requesting for a referendum? It's the political class that is requesting for referendum, so that the referendum can be maneuvered to say that, no, well, we have agreed as a population to change the constitution to allow the president to run for another term. So it's too early to tell whether he is going to stick, because one has to understand that the president has refused to make a commitment that indeed in December 23rd, when the elections are held, I'm going to step down and allow a democratic transition to happen.
Nixon, it's always great to have these discussions with you and have you in studio. Thank you so much for joining us. Unfortunately, we have run out of time, but this is a developing story, and the 23rd of December 2018 is a long time to come, so definitely we shall be seeing you again. That was analyst Nixon Katembo joining us in studio.